So, welcome everybody to our presentation, Energy Abundance. It does us great joy to see you all here together in these harsh times, that we can bring a nice group of people together to share this story with. It gives us great feeling of energy and joy. Also, a warm welcome to the people watching at home. Today we're going to talk about the reality and implications of free energy. And first we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit, and then we're going to dive deeper into the content of the presentation. First, I give the word to Casper. Take it away.
Yes. Hello, my name is Casper and I've grown up in the Netherlands in a really warm family and a lot of, wealth as we know it in the Netherlands. If I look at my life, I see a lot of elements like playfulness, joy of life, and creativity. During the process of growing up, I lost some of those elements, trying to live up to expectations of other people. Eventually, I started to study film, to become a filmmaker. There was the creative part in me that wanted to flourish. At the side, I did a lot of sports to have my playfulness expressed. Like for instance, wave surfing, windsurfing, freestyle skiing and climbing and other sports as well. And I felt a lot of freedom and connection with nature in the sports. And when I then studied like film, and after the graduation of film, I felt a lot of unfree feeling with the future prospect or the future scenario that was in front of me. So I went inwards to see like what does give me fulfillment. How can I combine those and still feel free in my life here in the city? So questions, what does give me fulfillment? What are my desires? But even like the bigger questions, what's the meaning of life? And in this research, I found a lot of other ways of living. And there were so many solutions for what I thought were actually problems that were unsolvable. How did I not see this before? And during this process, I found free energy. And free energy is an umbrella term for technologies that can produce an abundant amount of clean electricity. And the implications are really big for our society because our society is now based on scarcity. Later we go deeper into that aspect. And during that process of learning about free energy, I met Karsten, and we teamed up to move this subject forward, to share this message. And this presentation will go about free energy. But first, Karsten will introduce himself.
Thank you. Well, my name is Karsten van Asdonk. Most of you know me, and also for the watchers at home, I'm a student at the University of Eindhoven, the Technical University, and I'm doing applied physics there. And I took a gap year to move this project forward together with Casper. And the greatest drive actually in my life is curiosity. So ever since I was like a little toddler, I had a bunch of fascinations which followed each other up. So my first fascination was that of vacuum cleaners, believe it or not. So I used to ride around on the vacuum cleaner while my mom was cleaning the house. And then it became the human body. So it was the anatomy, and I used to draw all the organs and know all the functions. And then it became jet fighters and space flight. So I would draw all the planes and aerospace engineering, and on and on and on. And this curiosity led me to questioning these deeper philosophical, existential questions in life that Casper talked about as well. So I started to wonder what this reality is, this physical stuff that I can touch, this air that I breathe, and also what am I doing here as a human being, right? So what is my role Why am I alive? And in this curiosity, it led me all across the internet. I've been scouring the internet for days and hours and weeks. And I found many different perspectives and paradigms on life that you don't encounter in your textbooks, for example, in school or in university for that matter, or even in the news, like in the mainstream world of news. And these perspectives completely turned my whole worldview, my whole paradigm around. And I found subjects like free energy that we're going to talk about today, but also broader subjects like philosophy, spirituality, and I integrated them to form a new worldview. And together with this curiosity was very much a state of disillusionment that grew larger and larger because I felt so much inequality and so much poverty and war and famine, and the whole list goes on and on. We all feel like the world is burning in a sense, and it felt like for me, if I'm going to go to university, have a nice job, 9 to 5, then work for 50 years, and then have a pension, and then die, or something like that. That didn't really feel right, so I started to question those things as well. Fast forward to last year, then I met Casper at a conference on free energy, and then something clicked, and we moved forward to spread the message about free energy, because that's one of the great passions that I found, and I really feel the energy for to spread the message. So what are we talking about when we say the word free energy? Free energy can mean free in the monetary sense, of course, so free as in, free to grab, but free actually refers more to the freedom it gives humanity to live independently from a centralized system that is controlling the population. And it gives people the freedom to live independently from that and in harmony with all of life, with each other and the planet. So the free in free energy is about freedom. That's a very key aspect. And when we talk about energy abundance, we talk about the implementation of these technologies in a society, in which case energy is abundant because it will be free. But we also refer to the fact that everything is actually already energy. So everything can be described in terms of energy or waves of vibration. And so energy abundance is just the nature of reality. Everything is energy, from the air to the molecules in your body, the air that we breathe, even the vacuum of space, as we will see, is comprised of energy. And it's just a matter of transforming one form of energy to the other and how we use it. And now Casper will run you through the steps that we are going to take to give a nice overview of this broad subject and what it touches upon. So please, Casper, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to look at some steps. First, we're going to look at the history, the pioneers in free energy. The second, we're going to look at where does this energy come from? So the energy from the vacuum of space. And the questions that arise, like why is it not here yet? That's the aspect of our role of consciousness. And what will happen if we integrate this in our society? So the prospects and the implications. And to make it tangible for everyone, like what can I do to move this forward? We're going to look at initiatives. At the end we summarize it, and then we share our message, what we think we want to move forward and our creation with that. Well, let's start with the history, the pioneers in the free energy. I want to start with the story of Nikola Tesla. This guy has lived around the 1900s. And he was an inventor of a lot of inventions that we're using today. For instance, AC current, that's the electricity we're using in this building, for instance. or the electric induction motor that we use in electric vehicles, cars. And radio eventually came underneath his name as well, and many more. He has like hundreds of patents on his name. And he's also called like the inventor of the electric age. But still, he's been forgotten for some time. He's growing his popularity in this, well, around this time. But he was a visionary, you could say. And the more commonly known, like the electric car Tesla, is called after him as well. And this man, Nikola Tesla, had at the end of his life, he had a project called Wardenclyffe Tower. Wardenclyffe Tower, he found a way to tap into like a field that he called radiant energy, where he could create an abundant amount of electricity, clean one. And he wanted to transfer it wisely to all humankind and to give that as a present. And his financier, the J.P. Morgan, maybe you know the Morgan Bank, he financed this project. But eventually he took the finances back because he realized that if this technology would be introduced, his whole power structure would collapse. Well, too bad this project didn't move forward from there, but this inventor had a vision to move this forward. And what this Nikola Tesla brought us, and so much, I really hold value to it, what he said. And I want to name some quotes that he shared with us. All people everywhere should have free energy sources. Electric power is everywhere present in unlimited quantities to drive the world's machinery without the need for coal, oil, or gas. Too bad that this technology didn't flourish at that moment, but it inspired many other people to look for this. In the past century, there has been many inventors, and I will highlight 4 inventors. And afterwards, I will show a timeline of some inventors that we've collected that put their effort into this subject. To start, I want to highlight Thomas Henry Moray. Thomas Henry Moray was a man who inspired by Tesla, and he was working with a lot of radio signals until he found as well a source that he called radiant energy. Therefore, he built a device that he had sort of like a vacuum tube with solid state device, and it means that there are no moving parts in the device. It could produce like a cold form of electricity. What does that mean? Is that if you turn it on, the device would cool itself. And the output of this device was like 50 kilowatts. That's like average 10 households that they could provide electricity to. This has been observed by many people, but still he felt a lot of resistance. He could not get any patents for this device. He's been threatened many times and even got shot like in his laboratory. So the thing that he wanted to move forward felt a lot of resistance. The second man I want to highlight is Paul Baumann. Paul Baumann lived in Switzerland in a Christian community in Linde. And he produced a device that's called the Statica. And he's made different ones, as you see in the different pictures. And like the middle one could produce like 3 kilowatts, that's like a small household. And the bigger one that is probably still running in their community till today is more like 30 kilowatts. That's like 5 or 6 households. Well, an interesting thing from Paul was that he had a vision that he didn't want to share his technology with humankind because he thought that humanity was simply not ready yet to carry the responsibility that came along with this kind of technology. Later on, we'll dive deeper into why we think the same at that time, but now we think times are changing. The third is John Bedini. John Bedini, he worked in the US Army as an electrical engineer, and then built like a company with his brother, Bass Audio, made a lot of audio equipment that is still a lot of real popular around the world. And in 2003, he released information how to build your own permanent monopole magnet motor. You see like the picture in the middle, and that the device would then charge batteries. Yeah, he had a lot of versions, and this one that could produce like 10 kilowatts. So that's like a big household or 2 households. With that information he shared, one girl, like she's 10 years old when she did it, she replicated that device, and she won her local science fair in Ohio with it. So Bedini called it then the Bedini schoolgirl device, that it would be so simple to replicate, poking people. But this device has been replicated by many people, but there are as a big group as well that don't seem to get it. So it needs a new way of thinking as well. He has a lot of patents on his name as well, if you are interested to look that up. And the last one I want to share is Herman Anderson. Herman Anderson, I really like this guy, he's an old guy. And after his career, where he worked with NASA and the US Air Force, like really secret projects like rockets to the moon, to space, and the Blackbird, if maybe some people know. And it seems that this guy has worked with a lot of gadgets, backstage, and after his career he patented a spark plug. And a spark plug is like the lighter of the view in the engine of a car. The kind of spark plug that he invented was one that you could run your car on water. He found a way to split the water molecule really efficiently with the resonant frequencies of the water molecule that could create a hydrogen gas local in the car instead of what we now know in our society, that still has to produce centralized, and then you could run your car on hydrogen. Some cars are actually, you can buy them today. This guy has not been the only one. And if you want to look up some, they had the same technologies like that spark plug. Guys like Stanley Meyer, Danny Klein. Genpax was a company in Japan, and George Wiseman, Ryunsun Omasa, and Daniel Dingle from the Philippines. The funny thing with this guy, Herman, is that the authorities let him drive his car, but he could not sell it. Too bad. Okay, then I will show you a timeline. We've collected a lot of inventors that put their efforts to move this forward. And as you see, over time, a lot of more inventors came into the field. It seems like that not every invention comes on the market, and it needs at first creativity to think sort of out of the boxes, then a lot of perseverance to move it forward, and eventually luck as well. And who are these inventors? Like a lot of people that just worked at many companies and just found this kind of way to produce this, and then build their own companies, so small companies. But today there are a lot of hobbyists as well, sharing their knowledge on the internet, like an open source way. Too bad there's not been done a lot of research on the universities. There's a lot of resistance in there as well, and Karsten will dive deeper into that later on. And we think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and that there actually are way more people that are creating these devices. But that will get clearer later in the presentation as well. So I've highlighted some inventors and their technologies to give you some hope that these technologies can actually exist. And maybe the question may arise, okay, cool, but where does the energy come from if this works? And Karsten will explain more.
This is exactly where my curiosity drives me, because I find it fascinating to see all of these inventors who have like a common thread of tapping into some unknown source of energy, and it boils up in me, like, what is this energy? Where does this energy come from? Certainly it cannot be created out of nothing, and as we will see, indeed, that is not the case. So, where does it come from? We've talked a little bit about the notion that everything is energy and everything is comprised of waves and can be spoken of in terms of energy. And actually that notion is very old. In fact, it is thousands of years old, and there's a notion for this, and every culture has its own notion of this energy, but the most famous one that we know is ether. And you might have heard this term before. The ether is sometimes still used in terms of broadcasting television signals or radio signals. They say it's received or transmitted through the ether. And they're actually quite correct, because in that sense, the ether is a medium through which waves can propagate. So it provides substance to all forms of energy. Or in other words, the ether is an all-pervasive field of energy from which everything physical is derived. So it's like a primordial substance, a foundation for everything that we can see, touch, and measure in terms of energy. So, as I've said, like in all of history, there's a lot of cultures who have accepted the notion of this energy, and we call it ether, but in the old Indian culture, in the Vedic scriptures, they called it akasha, and that word is still seen in spiritual circles today. They call it the Akasha Chronicles, or the Akashic records, and it's a field of information which can be tapped into at any point in time and space. And it's a conscious field of energy, right? So it has like a conscious life force, and that's also what you see in terms like chi and prana. So for example, when you practice Tai Chi, you practice the biological, physical embodiment of the ether in yourself. It's like a living force of nature. Prana is something similar. It's a moving life force. And in physics, we have terms like zero-point energy, dark energy, cosmic energy. There are many different names for that. We'll get into that a little bit more. So just to pick out an example of a culture is the Greek culture, where Plato and Aristotle, they philosophized that the ether is one of the 5 main elements next to air, water, earth, and fire. And it is so fundamental, they said, that without the ether, all of the other elements wouldn't even exist. It is the most primal of elements in this system of 5. And funnily enough, our word quintessence, which is a word we still use, is derived from that, because it literally means the 5th essence. And in figurative speech, it means that which is most important, that which it is all about, the quintessence. I find it pretty amazing. So, throughout history, the ether has undergone a lot of interpretations and notions, and around the turn of the 19th century, from the 19th to the 20th century, there has been some experiments, and the notion of ether was kind of discredited by these experiments. And also with the introduction of Einstein's relativity theories, it has become unpopular. But now, with the introduction of quantum physics, we can again appreciate this field of energy, and now we have all kinds of different names for it. So just to give you an idea of what quantum physics is, it is the study of the smallest building blocks of the universe. So for example, when I have an atom and I split it, it's comprised of all tiny particles, the electron, the proton, the neutron, and these are all waves in their proper form, and quantum physics describes how these interact and how these form the reality that we can perceive. So what they've found is that when we cool down an atom all the way to its 0 point in temperature, so that's 0 degrees Kelvin, it still has a minimal amount of energy left. And that's why they call it the 0 point energy. So somehow, even though we try harder and harder to pull away the energy from the atom, it is still being supplied with an energy source that is all around the atom from the vacuum of space. They also call it vacuum energy or dark energy. And in this left bubbly picture over here, you can see a visualization of this. They also call it the quantum foam, because it's like a vibrating, moving, quantum bubbly field that is everywhere around us. And it is sort of creating and destroying these particles, these virtual particles. And in this movement, it sustains the physical universe that we have. It sustains the electron that is eternally spinning around an atom nucleus. So how much energy is this really? John Wheeler and Richard Feynman, they've calculated this, and they've said that in the volume of a cup of coffee, so that is like this big, there's so much energy in its empty space that we can boil all of the Earth's oceans. Take a moment to wrap your head around that. That is enough energy to supply the whole world with electricity for 1 million years. And now imagine how much space we have. There's like infinite space for as far as we can see. So that's mind-bogglingly large. If we are able to tap this, and we've researched it, people have probably succeeded in tapping this, then we can solve all of our energy problems, so to say. So the question becomes, how the hell do we do this? How do we tap into this giant sea of energy? There are two terms that come with this that are pretty important. One is resonance. So when I have two tuning forks with the same frequency and I hit one and I hold the other one next to it, the other starts vibrating with the same frequency because they come into resonance. The waves are moving at the same pace and they amplify each other. So what happens if I have a device where I input a signal and the signal is being amplified by the 0 point energy field, by the ether, because it has the same frequency? Then there is more energy out of the device than I have to put into it to run the device. So we're not creating energy here, we're just transforming one form of energy to the other. That is the key aspect of this. And that leads to over-unity. Over-unity meaning there's an efficiency larger than 100% for the device. So there's more energy coming out of the device that can be fed back into the device to let it run eternally, and there's excess energy to run your car, for example, or to run your house. One more key difference between technologies like this, free energy technologies, and the technologies that we've been using for a long time, is the principle of explosion and implosion. If we look at combustion engines and, for example, the atom bomb that you see on there on the left with this beautiful mushroom cloud, then it's a force of destruction. We are actually pulling molecules apart in a nuclear reactor or in an atom bomb or when we burn stuff, and then it releases a lot of energy. It's a destructive kind of energy generation. But how nature does it is actually precisely the other way around. For a tree, for example, it assimilates nutrients, water, and energy to its core so that the tree can grow and thrive. So it's precisely the other way around. And then there's a balance between the energy going inwards and the energy going outwards again, like you see very nicely in the animation. And this field is like a self-regenerating toroidal field, it's called. It's like a donut shape. It goes all around, and it can also be seen in magnetic fields, for example. And even when I cut open an apple, you can see this pattern of nature everywhere, really. And you will see that even in fruits and everything that is harmoniously created, this energy pattern with the energy going inwards and then outwards again can be found everywhere. And so this is how nature harmoniously thrives, and how free energy devices work, because they implode the ether field and they create something new out of it. And this has something to do with our consciousness, because we've been using explosion technology a lot, and that is something that we manifest. So it's basically a reflection of our destructive nature in technology. And when we move towards implosion technology, we become balanced again between the implosion and the explosion. Just like that. Then we have another burning question. If all of this is true, and if all of this history is true, and we've seen a lot of these inventors with their amazing devices, and we've seen where the energy comes from, why is it not here yet? Why am I not driving around in a car that is running on water? Or why am I not receiving energy from the vacuum of space, if it's that simple? We think that it has to do with consciousness, and consciousness as the most fundamental aspect. And we'll go a little bit into why we think that is. We see the world today as largely controlled by scarcity, competition, and fear amongst these negative aspects of humanity, which influence consciousness on many different levels of society. So for example, the economy, which always has a growth imperative, the economy needs to grow and grow and grow, otherwise it ceases to exist. And everything is scarce, from commodities to energy, resources. Everything's based around scarcity. Not to mention that you have to beat out the competition, right, to get to the top. You have to be a high banking financier to be really successful in our economy. So the economy is also based on a form of money, which is called fiat money, which is basically money on good trust. There's no really intrinsic value anymore in our money. You're not being paid in gold. And what happens if we introduce a device which can create its own capital? If we have a free energy device, you have created with that energy your own intrinsic value. This system can't handle that. So the natural response of the economic system and the banks say, well, resistance. We don't want this, because otherwise the whole house of cards is falling down, literally. Something similar for the government, because the function of the government is one of control of the entire population. And when the individual regains its sovereignty by having a free energy source, the whole function of the government is lost, the whole controlling function. And so the government feels this fear and this loss of control as well, a lot of resistance there in the consciousness. In the third group, we have the scientists, and I'm studying at a university, so I kind of know and feel what I'm talking about. There's a lot of fear and competition going on there as well, because scientists really fear to move outside of the boundaries of what is already known. You know, when we talk about Einstein, we say, well, he was the most brilliant scientist, and don't you dare to question what he said, because then you will be laughed at, you will be ridiculed, and, you know. So there's a lot of fear in there. And then there's the inventors as well, who have worked on technologies like free energy, and who have succeeded, But then there's fear of getting also ridiculed for bringing forward two new technologies. And also to lose their invention, which is their baby, right? It's their creation. They don't want to just give it to the world. They want to make money of it. So if some large company comes to their door and says, well, here's $5 million. Thank you for your technology, but don't speak of your technology again. These feelings of scarcity and fear, they run rampant in every human being, so also in these inventors. And when you go looking for it on YouTube, for example, like 95% of these inventors are fraudulent. They build a device that doesn't work just to get attention. Also just a human expression. So beware if you do that. And badly enough, the other parties in the system, they use these fraudulent guys as proof that the whole free energy scene is a scam, is fraudulent at all. But we have to look for that 5% that is verifiably real, because we think we found that, and that is worth a try at least. So the last group is you and I. It's just the people that are at the lowest rung of the pyramid, if you will. And the funny thing is, we make the rest of society. We are becoming the scientists. We make the government and the economy. So the real change lies within you and me. So that is where also the responsibility comes in moving towards a more loving, compassionate society. This responsibility leads to a new way of thinking, a new way of innovating, in which morality and ethics become very important. Can I uphold my moral integrity to move this energy forwards? Because if it falls into the wrong hands, then it can be made into a weapon which can destroy the world in seconds. If you can boil the world's oceans, imagine what you can do. So to make it really tangible, what does that mean, like morality? If I stand in front of a shelf of eggs in the supermarket and there's like the mass industry eggs on the lower rung and the biological 4-pack eggs, which are really expensive, there's different intentions behind these different products. And I can choose with my energy, my money, which intention I give energy to. And the same goes for innovations in technology and accepting a new paradigm like this. You have to open yourself up for it, and then we can move forward. Then there's the difference between abundance, creating abundance from the heart and from the mind. And when you think about it, if energy is abundant, like we say it is, then scarcity and greed and competition, they become really silly notions in comparison. They're not necessary at all. And abundance from the mind still wants to hoard everything, right? So, there's so much in the world and I want it all for myself. That's really not the way forward. Abundance from the heart is about sharing. It is about compassion. It is about knowing that love is the answer to all problems. Just that simple. And when we open up to these notions, then we are truly heading, that's what I feel very deep inside of me, that we're moving towards a world of abundance, cooperation, and compassion. And now we turn to the weather report. So what are the prospects, Casper, if we move forwards into a world where free energy becomes tangible and we can move into a loving, compassionate society? Take the floor.
Thank you. Well, we have a lovely weather tomorrow. But so, what are the prospects if we integrate these free energy technologies in our society? First, I want to share some text with you. Free energy technology gives us the choice between a life-destroying system, dependence on a life-destroying system, or independence in harmony with all life. And to understand that a little bit more, I want to share how we currently have our production in like an average product. For instance, let's say a laptop. We have a lot of plastics in it, maybe aluminium, some rare metals. To gather all these resources, we have to mine them first. Then they are being shipped to a place where they're being built like for small parts. They are being transported again to put all the small parts together to a bigger part, like for instance, the whole laptop. Then it has to be shipped, for instance, to the seaport here in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. It's a big seaport. Then it's like with a truck carried to a distribution center, from the distribution center to the store, and there we can buy it. Well, cool, because we now have laptops. It's really awesome because we can now connect through the internet with each other. But this whole process costs a lot of energy. And the average product, therefore, is like the most costs in that product is the energy that it takes to complete that cycle. And if we bring that cost down to, let's say, 1% or 0%, because we have these free energy technologies that have an abundant amount of electricity or energy available, then the value of all these products is gone, and we have to have a new system to value. We go a little bit deeper into this later, but first I want to show some elements in our society that can change as well. And I invite you to think for yourself, because I'm just giving some possible future scenarios, but each element in our society can change. So let's start with production. We can recycle a lot of resources, and we know recycling from today. And we have so many resources already in our society, but it's still not profitable yet, because it takes a lot of energy to rip these resources apart to create a new sort of product. With the introduction of free energy technologies, we have the energy to pull those products apart and create new products. And there's a possibility to create resources locally as well. Why so? Therefore, I wanted to give you a thought experiment of like the atom bomb, like Karsten showed earlier as well. It's like a tiny bit of matter that we're splitting, and it creates an extreme explosion of energy. Therefore, we have the Einstein equation, like E equals mc squared. So energy is equals mass and the speed of light. So we split this, then we get a release of energy. But what if we have a lot of energy and we can turn this equation around? So we have a lot of energy and we can probably create matter. This is still in a lot of early phase research, but really interesting to research more upon. Okay, let's look at housing. Now we have a lot of, the intention of housing is to make it affordable for everyone. But that can completely shift as well to qualitative housing. How do you want to live? And maybe the question can arise like, well, if everyone lives as king, are we not with too many humans on the planet? But if we gather all the human beings on the continent of Australia, and we have one big party, especially in these times, then everyone would still have 1,000 square meters for themselves. And the rest of the world would be empty. From this perspective, we are not with too many humans, but it's just how we've structured our society, that other life cannot flourish and have experience here on Earth. To highlight a little bit more about that, we go to transport. Transport, well, we have the short term, we can change our our transport systems to make it travel on a clean way, like the device Herman Andersen had. But in the long term, we can do everything flying. We have the energy that is needed to do it. So we don't need roads anymore. Well, that makes a lot of room for other life to flourish. And there's a presumable correlation with gravity and ether as well. There's a lot of research into this. If you want to dive deeper into this, it can lead to anti-gravity vehicles. The next thing is politics. Well, now we have a politics that a lot of power is centralized, as well as the energy grids we're using. With these devices, we can decentralize everyone, take our sovereignty back, and connect with our neighbors, like, hey, how do you want to live? What are our values? Agriculture is the same shift of intention. A lot of cheap, many foods to qualitative foods. We can look at a lot of biodiversity or connecting more with nature. In the next slide, we're going to look at ecology, economy, and leisure. So, if we don't have to fight for survival anymore, we don't have to conquer nature anymore, and we don't have to deplete it anymore, then what is our relationship with nature? We can open up our hearts and see, like, what is there actually? And the more I do it, I see so much wealth and abundance of life, and so much beauty. And it gives me a lot of fulfillment to look for this relationship. What kind of relationship do I want with nature? And I invite you, all individuals that are watching and that are here, to think for yourself, what kind of a relationship do I want with nature? So we talked a little bit earlier on the value system. And if we don't have to think about the value system based on production costs, then we think it can shift to human intention. Why so? Well, Karsten gave an example of the axe, and I want to give another example, like for instance, 5 products. I have a lot of product choice here in the Netherlands, and I can pick the cheapest one, but that doesn't give me fulfillment anymore today. So I'm choosing like a company that's trying to have like more equal rights, or let's say pay everyone like a fair salary, or do less harm on the environment. That gives a lot of value for me to that company, so I'm buying their product. To take this further, because this is growing in our society, well, I know it in the Netherlands, we can look at more human values. For instance, creativity can have a lot of value. Well, connecting, of course, with others. Healthcare can have a lot of value, or care on itself together with human beings. A lot of human values. Self-development, education, and we can have a whole debate on this, like what will have value. So, if we have a whole new balance in our society with work and leisure, what are you going to do with your spare time? The question is, what are your desires to do? Like maybe you want to go to a trip to Greenland. I've never been there, but I never had the time. Well, now you got the time, so what kind of desires do you have? What is your heart's desire? I invite you to open already your heart to this way of living, and this is something you can already imagine or dream. How do you want to see your life to become or be? And the funny thing is, then things can already lead to this kind of life even without free energy. This world is coming, so it's for us and each individual to embrace this and to use this in a loving, constructive way. To end this chapter, I want to give you a positive feedback loop. In my discovery or my search of what's the meaning of life, and together with Karsten, we walked this path separately, but we both felt the answer was love. Well, so cliche and all, but still, it's like in all the sorrow, in all the pain, in all the destruction and still happiness, it was all just learning for us. So much learning to find the harmony inside myself, find the love, and that's pretty challenging though. But when I'm growing, it gives me so much fulfillment. And when I feel more harmony and love inside myself, I inspire others. And as each one is growing, we are creating a fundament of a society that is actually based on love. And if you want to know more about this, there's done a lot of research on this. You can look up mass meditations. And if we create this fundament, then free energy can actually arise. Because people will carry this energy, the loving energy, where we can actually create our way of living that is balanced in a way in harmony with all life. And that brings us back to the top. What is the meaning of life? It's a way of experiencing love. So maybe you feel inspired, like, yeah, okay, cool. But now what? Make it practical. So the question may arise, what can I do? And we'll Karsten go into that.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, right? Because we've now seen the entire story, basically, of free energy, and, well, for me, it's pretty obvious that we should continue with this, but how do I start? Where do I go in this story? Because I'm just little tiny me, right? I'm an individual, and there's this whole mountain of change that is to come, and these problems that we should fix, or I should fix. What can I do? And we've unveiled it already a little bit, also in what Casper has said. And for us, it's really about inner growth. It's about being that change you want to see in the world. When you look inside of yourself and you already ask yourself the questions, what do I really want in life? What values do I want my life to be based upon? Do I want it to be competition? Or do I want to live in fear and hide myself continuously? Or do I want to open up and truly connect with people and have a loving, compassionate society? When you focus on love, you will experience that a lot of doors will open that you never even thought of existing and that you never thought possible to be opened. And you're never really alone, right? In your struggles and your fears, but also in your desires. So when you connect with other people that have the same desire as you will experience that same resonance effect that we've been talking about. And it's going to accelerate this change. It's going to exponentially make this field stronger. It's going to raise the vibration even higher and higher until there is room and space to open up for these new technologies. So that's just the start of it, right? That's the start of what you can do to create a fundament for this new society that we're talking about. So up till now, this is how change used to go. This is like a little comic to illustrate that. At the top, you have like the UN person screaming out, "Who wants change?" And that's everybody, "Yay, we want change." Everybody likes change. And then secondly, he shouts, "Who wants to change?" And then the crickets sound, and nobody really wants to change, right? Ooh, everybody wants change, but changing yourself is kind of scary. And then finally he asks, "Who wants to lead the change?" And then there's no crowd at all. you've lost them, because that is a no-go area. And that is exactly what we need to do today. When we are starting to be the change that we want to see in the world, we are taking that next step forward, and we are engaging ourselves and our direct environment to open up to these amazing possibilities. So what's more to do? You can obviously spread the message. If you heard about this, you can connect with people and talk about this, open up the conversation, because this is happening, right? There's the New Energy Movement. It's an online community bringing all kinds of people from all over the world together to talk about this and to spread the message and to get informed, meet up, or even work together. The NUI Foundation, which is the Foundation for Moral Technology, they integrate this philosophy of ethics and morality in innovation to connect the financiers, the business people, to the scientists and inventors who are working on this. And so they have several stages through which these technologies are validated to try and bring them to the market, which they're currently working on. And it's a hard task, so it takes time, but I think it's worth the effort in the end. Then there's the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement Congress, where I met Casper a year ago. It's a congress where a lot of people come together and speak about their experiences as scientists or inventors in this field. And something similar to the Tesla Science Foundation, there are many more foundations like that. So doing your own research, that is like the mantra that everybody that has been working on this is spewing out, because nobody actually can convince you of anything. Even I, when I speak these words, don't take my words for granted, but convince yourself, because that is the only way that you can conceive of your own notion of the reality of this free energy. It's really helpful to do that. And this is just a list of technologies that we have discovered that are currently being developed that you can check out if you're interested. And there's loads more. You can dive into the history of this, but doing your own research really makes it tangible for yourself and makes it possible to open up the conversation yourself because you're knowledgeable. Then there's books you can read, same stuff. These are just some books that we have a sort of affinity with, written by Joel Garbin, Susan Mainwich, and Jean Manning. And they've also been translated in Dutch, so if you like that language, if you prefer that, you can order them on the website below. And lastly, to finish this whole story, Casper is going to wrap this whole big bunch of information together for you to take home, because it's a lot. And for that, I give the word to Casper again.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Maybe tomorrow you meet a friend and say like, oh yeah, I've heard about free energy. And he's asking like, yeah, explain to me. So we're going to summarize it. What is free energy? Free energy is an umbrella term for technologies that produce abundant amount of clean energy, mostly electricity we can use. So how does it work? It taps into the ether, the sea of energy that we actually are swimming in. What are the implications? Well, the implications are that we are currently in a society based on scarcity. And we can completely shift to a society that's based on love and abundance. So why is it not here yet? Because our consciousness is as well in that box of scarcity. And is shifting in these times to that state of love and abundance. And what can I do? What just Karsten shared is to move your own consciousness to this and spread this knowledge. Engage with people, connect with each other, to move this subject or other subjects, to move this new society forward. That helps build this field. At last, I want to share our way forward, because we have teamed up, Karsten and I and a whole team behind us, to move this subject forward. So we're giving presentations and we're writing books, and we also or creating a documentary. My background is in the film, and I want to give an overview perspective on this subject and make it understandable, tangible for all ages in our society. Giving people hope. Like, we can actually change our whole society, just if we want to. If you want to know more about this, you can go to our website, energyabundance.world. We're open for collaborations to move this forward, and also welcoming donations, financial donations, to help us make this documentary. I really want to thank you for today, for listening, and the viewers as well, because this is a topic so close to our heart, and we want to see this move forward. Thank you for that.
Thank you.